Good morning. I want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to discuss the nature of the enemy that carried out the September 11 attacks. The Commission staff statement that was read this morning paints an accurate picture of Al-Qaeda's history and evolution and how this organization came to pose such a serious threat to the United States. What I would like to do over the next few minutes is to provide some context for the staff statement by examining the role that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda played in the broader Sunni jihadist movement. Bin Laden, to be sure, is the key part of that movement, but the movement goes beyond just him and Al-Qaeda. And just as their place in it and the role that they play have evolved, our understanding has also evolved. That understanding helped to shape our response to the attack that took place on 9/11, because we knew about the people and the organization, as well as the role and importance of the Afghan sanctuary. As we continue to learn about the enemy, that additional knowledge will help to shape how we respond in the future. It is also critically important to understand the role bin Laden and his organization play in the broader jihadist movement so we can better understand the nature of the future threats and how to deal with them. The story that's told in the staff statement describes a very deliberate, patient adversary driven by a utopian ideology, possessing a comprehensive strategy, an enemy that is independent, an enemy that is disciplined. Keep in mind, however, that in the early days of Al-Qaeda, it was just one part of the emerging global jihadist movement. The Mujahideen who had fought the Soviet Union and Afghanistan returned home and brought with them the terrorist skills they had learned in the fight against the Soviets. The belief that they could beat anyone if they were willing to die for their cause, and contacts with other individuals and terrorist groups that had been forged in Afghanistan. That confidence and capability was directed at those who were perceived to be a threat to their vision of Islam, whether it was their own government, the United States, or Israel. Several factors allowed Al-Qaeda to emerge out of this environment as the preeminent organization and serve in many ways as the ideological and practical force unifying these individuals and groups. First of all, bin Laden and his followers possessed a utopian ideology based on a vision of the old notion of a single caliphate. This vision, while extreme, resonated among many Muslims and was attractive because it was built on a foundation of deeply ingrained cultural and religious norms and sought to redress deeply felt historical wrongs. Muslims who felt victimized by their governments, had some claim to being victims of colonialism, or felt their societies drifting into corruption could identify with bin Laden and his vision. Al-Qaeda and others cultivated an image of bin Laden as the voice for this vision. He was portrayed as the pious son of a pious but wealthy man who shunned the comforts of home and spent his wealth and risked his life for others. Bin Laden himself increased his credibility by laying out his program and sticking to it. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. This allowed the group to operate anywhere and attract support and members everywhere. All of this would have come to nothing without a comprehensive strategy, but Al-Qaeda had that too. Al-Qaeda was created to serve as the base or foundation for a new global movement, what one former member has called an Islamic army. That's army with a small a. When you look at Al-Qaeda's internal documents, you can see that they thought through what this would take. They knew they would need to build relations with groups in every part of the world. and build the conditions for Islamic militant groups to arise where none then existed. Al-Qaeda encouraged, supported, and inspired the terrorist activities of others, all while planning its own operations. Although some Al-Qaeda members may have been involved in several early attacks in the 1990s against U.S. interests, the East Africa bombings in August of '98 are the first attacks that were exclusively Al-Qaeda operations. As Al-Qaeda grew and evolved, it not only conducted operations that were centrally planned, it also approved operations initiated by members dispersed in other countries, and continued to support and inspire other associated or independent groups to attack as well. We see more of these semi-autonomous operations today, not because Al-Qaeda is weak, even though it has been weakened, but because Al-Qaeda succeeded in building the capacity of other groups and individuals in the broader network. Al-Qaeda put a premium on its ability to operate as an independent organization, independent from states, as well as from donors and other groups. This is an integral part of its operating directive. Al-Qaeda sought independence in every facet of its work: organization, strategy, funding, and supplies. It sought to dictate the terms of its relations with states, rather than the other way around. Al-Qaeda's relationship with states was symbiotic, especially with those states that granted it safe haven. And this left Al-Qaeda free to pursue its own strategy in its own time. Rather than give up this flexibility, bin Laden defied states, including the Taliban, when it directed him not to launch attacks. In general, the Taliban offered Al-Qaeda a safe environment to do its thing, including building up its own funding network within the larger global network so that they would never be dependent upon any one source of funds or territory, building its own network of sympathetic imams to provide religious direction and legitimacy, building their own training camps and weapons factories, and operated their own recruitment network. All of this required patience and discipline.